You know, I must say, recently I've got quite into the different aspects of buildcraft in the game. What with the healing Necro we did, the power NG we looked at recently, I've even been looking at healing NG. Well, today we're back on Necro, and we're on Necro for kind of a fun build. Now, I don't know whether we can really call this a build. It's more of a gimmick, it's more of a trick. It's even something so insane, I'm pretty sure will be nerfed. But if you want to have a little bit of fun in the meantime, before it gets nerfed, today I want to talk to you guys about what I consider the most OP synergy, most ridiculous thing in the game for the open world, personal story, and general exploration stuff. This is not a raid build. I don't even think this is maybe this is a dungeon build. I don't think it's a fractals build. Basically, anywhere you're in instances, this thing won't work. But when it comes to stuff like killing the Gerent, when it comes to killing the Octavine, when any world boss, or just any general exploration, I do not believe there is anything currently in the game stronger or more absurd than what I'm about to show you guys today. I haven't seen anyone talking about this online at all. It just ties into a big favorite of mine that I know is in Guild Wars 2, quite an archaic part of Guild Wars 2 these days that I've done a video on before, and because of recent balance changes with the Necromancer, it's kind of power creeped the hell out of something, and I don't think a lot of people realize what that is. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the Bitter Chill Frostgun Necro. Oh yeah! Alright, okay guys, so what the hell is so crazy about this? The Frostgun you guys might remember. New players probably have no idea about this thing. This is an environmental weapon that you can buy in Gendaran Fields at the end of a specific event chain that takes place in, yeah, you guessed it, the mountain area, Shiverspur, Frontier, and down to Icegate Gorge. So it's a very simple event where you escort a golem guy who then collects some materials as some pathetic waves of ice elementals attack him. Once you've done that and the event's over, if you follow and stick about with the NPC, most players would run off at this point. If you stick about with the NPC, they will actually sell you frost guns for really cheap too, just a matter of copper for each one. Buying an entire stack will cost you just 1 gold, and a stack of frost guns will last you a long time. Now, once you've got a frost gun, you'll get access to 5 specific abilities, all of which are really fun. This is probably my favorite environmental weapon in the game, and it's from 2012. It's never been updated by the devs, and as such, it's kind of a look into the past. It's got really weird, old kind of tooltips on the skills that don't quite comprehensively explain everything all the skills do. It's got weird versions of abilities that you find on other areas of the game. So for example, our skill 5 here, this is Deep Freeze, but it's a kind of slightly different, longer ranged, changed version of the Deep Freeze you get on ice bows from Elementalists. This ability here, Shard Volley, is an ability that applies bleeds but has a minimum range. So look, target is too close, and you don't get too many of these in Guild Wars 2 anymore. But if we go far enough away, you'll see that this acts quite a lot like Ice Bow 4. You've got a rifle butt here, which is a warrior ability. And lastly, we have the 2 crazy ones that I'm going to be talking about for today. We've got Frozen Escape and we have Frost Jet, both of which are very interesting. Both apply a ton of chill. So, why is this kind of important? Some of you active players should know where I'm going with this already. It used to be, for years and years and years in Guild Wars 2, this frost gun wasn't very good because, so what if you can apply tons of chill? Chill doesn't stack intensity or anything, so it didn't really matter for the game. But nowadays it does, and that's because of Necromancer, or more specifically, Reaper. So this is a condition damage build, and as many of you might be familiar, for Reapers, you get a Grandmaster trait. 2 of them are kind of flat damage related, but the other one is condition damage related. It's called Deathly Chill, and what it does is it makes your chill apply bleeds. So you can see where I'm going with this. Now, when Heart of Thorns first came out, Deathly Chill had a slightly different functionality. It was instead that your chill now dealt damage, which again meant that it didn't have any particular synergy with Frostgun. So what if you're applying tons of chill, if you already have perma chill on there anyway? It didn't really mean very much. Well, shortly later, the developers changed that, I think mostly for a PvP perspective and a cleansing perspective, in how people load conditions versus cleanse in the game. And instead they just made it so that Bitter Chill applies bleed when you apply chill. And that already made the Frostgun synergy go way up. But then came the most recent patch, where it went from being 1 bleed for a slightly longer duration to 3 bleeds for, if you have 100% bleed duration, 10 seconds. So, deathly chill, every time we apply 1 packet of chill on someone, it will stack 3 bleed on them, and that does stack intensity. So all of a sudden, this super old, and I'm sure the devs weren't thinking about this when they made this, this trait work this way now. This old ass ice gun, which again, I'm pretty sure will be nerfed, suddenly has some use, and it has some ridiculous use. So I want to talk a little bit about this and just show you how insane this is. This is Deep Freeze. This does massive break bar damage. It freezes someone in place. It's already an incredibly strong ability. What the tooltip won't tell you outside of the CC though, and as an active player and quite a, a detailed player, you might already know, this actually does apply chill. Periodically, it will chill like once every 2 seconds for as long as your target is encased in ice. So here what we're going to do is we're going to cast this on the Plague Bearer. And what you're going to see is the Plague Bearer gets stunned, and then it gets chilled and 3 bleeds, and then chilled and then 3 bleeds, and then chilled and 3, and it will keep doing that, even though I'm not casting anything, okay? So here we go, let's deep freeze him. Watch his buff bar. 3 bleeds, 6 bleeds, 9 bleeds, 12 bleeds! 12 bleeds just from this one skill! And because of our another trait we've got, we get 12 vulnerability out of that alone. That means that just casting Deep Freeze here, in addition to being ridiculous break bar damage for whatever world boss or personal story boss you like or whatever, this does a ton of damage too, alright? Moving on, the other really cool skill is Frozen Escape. So this is kind of an alternate version of what Elementalists get on their staff in Water Attunement, their skill 4. It lays a frozen, an icy patch on the ground. Now, the tooltip doesn't tell you, but that's actually a combo field, which means we can use our Reaper Whirls in it, just like we would with our Reaper 5, our Executioner's Strike. Not only this though, but it also, every second when the target is in it, will chill on top of that. And as well, it does a flat packet of damage too, which can proc other traits for even more chill. So just to show you this in action, we could Deep Freeze to kill this Corruptor if we like, or we could use Frozen Escape. And watch how ridiculous this is as he tries to walk out. Look at his bleeds already, 16 bleeds. And if he'd stayed a little bit closer, I think he would have had even more. So again, we just got 16 bleeds minimum out of just casting this skill 3 here. So if you think that's absurd, right? If you're already seeing that you could run a regular condition damage Reaper and then just hot swap on this this gun every now and then and use these abilities. If you're thinking that, well, it gets even crazier when we look at the skill 1. And again, the skill 1 has some signs of some archaic design. Let's read it. Frost Jet. Spray a cone of frost. Chills foes with a critical hit. Ah, so that's pretty interesting. There aren't many skills like that with a built-in functionality like that anymore. But this has no internal cooldown whatsoever. So as long as you have very high crit chance, even your auto attack will apply tons of chill. And you might think, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, but guys, you have to understand, this Frost Jet is stronger than the Frozen Escape and stronger than the Deep Freeze by a long way. And why is that? That's because without quickness, this ability will channel for 2¼ seconds, but in those 2¼ seconds, it will do 9 different packets of damage. 9 times 3. A single auto attack in 2¼ seconds, if every single one of those 9 packets crits, is equal to 27 bleeds. 27 bleeds in 2¼ seconds. And if you had quickness, it would be even more insane. Okay? So I just want to show you guys what this looks like, okay? We're going to use the Frozen Escape on this big tanky risen giant here. And then we're going to auto attack him down with the 1. And look at his bleed stacks. Okay? Alright? Just from using the auto. I mean, I actually did a video like this a long time ago. We're over 100 bleeds here, guys. Maintaining over 100 bleeds, just auto-attacking. I remember once upon a time, a long time ago, I did another condition damage build video, or trick video, right here in Ore, using a different consumable item, and just doing this and experimenting with this build, after I realized the synergy was possible as of the most recent balance patch, I knew I had to show this to all of you. So this is why the Frost Gun is kind of insane right now. Very ironically, the skill 4, which has bleed built into it, is actually not as good as the other abilities because the bleed duration on this is only 6 seconds and only 1 stack per projectile you hit with. instead of 10 seconds and 3 per stack, even though they're both 9 packets of damage, if that makes sense. So that's really the idea of this build. You should have seen plenty of footage of this absolutely annihilating things. But there's a few more interesting things than just, oh, this gimmick, which may go away at some point. Some interesting angles for the build craft that I've quite enjoyed when pursuing this synergy. And that's the fact that we know this is only available in the open world as a build. And because of that, we can make a lot of different assumptions compared to when we're making like a fractals build or a raiding build. See, when you're making a raiding DPS build, right, you are operating under the assumption that you've got support from your allies in terms of offensive stuff. You're making the assumption that you may have like pinpoint distribution, which buffs your condi damage. And you're making the assumption that you'll have a healer and that you have banners and you have might and you have alacrity and you have quickness and all these things. But when we're talking about open world builds, where you tend to be running around on your own, you're not in a dedicated group with all the perfect buff stuff coming out, you're kind of a solo sustaining build, and it means that the build craft can be kind of interesting. So I want to show you guys why, not just because of the ludicrous damage that this does, ludicrous unsupported damage that this does, but a couple of other incredibly strong things about Necromancer that I played into for this build, okay? So first I just want to talk about the curses line. So curses is your condition damage line on Necro. It's obvious that you want to run this. Of particular import, we have Chilling Darkness, which isn't too important. You could take either of these other traits if you like. Probably Plague Sending's nice in some areas of PvE where you can flip some condis back. This tier isn't too important. In raids, we see people taking Master of Corruption. But in the open world, I actually think that Terror is much better because it makes your fear do damage and it allows you to spike things out a bit quicker. So I like that. But the Grandmaster tier especially is very interesting. Number one, you can run Lingering Curse, right? Which is while wielding a scepter, you get extra condi damage. And even though we're using a frost gun here, okay, if you look, we have a scepter underneath it. And if we check out our condition damage stats, okay, our condition damage stat right now is 1,646. And when I equip this frost gun, that actually goes down slightly. The other perk of this is that we get a duration increase on the scepter-based skills. But again, because we're not technically on a scepter, it doesn't count the scepter underneath. We're not using those abilities. Lingering Curse, the classic choice, while it still has some use, isn't necessarily the best thing to do. Perhaps even better than that, and this is really what makes this build insane, is Parasitic Contagion. This is a percentage of your condition damage, heals you. Well, in the open world, this is ridiculous because remember, we don't actually have a healer, and this suddenly becomes like some of the greatest sustain you will ever see in Guild Wars 2. Not only does this build stack ridiculous unsupported damage on bosses and things you'll fight, it caps out at about easily, just through auto attacking and using the skill 3, around 20,000 damage a second, okay? So you're taking 10% of that 20k every second back as health. Even better is the AoE component of this little build. See, Frozen Escape is a 5-target cleave. The Frostjet 2 is actually a multi-target cleave. It will hit, I believe, 5 targets. Maybe it's only 3. The tooltip won't tell us. I know it's at least 3, all right? So if you have multiple mobs that you're fighting at once, say, for example, let's try and aggro this giant here. Careful. So, you know, we barely tick him and he gets 14 bleed on him here. If we aggro him and we also aggro this Plague Bearer for a second, it's very easy on this build. Hopefully these guys move together. Of course, they're chilled, so they're moving very slow. That guy's going to die too. Look at how ridiculous this build is. Right, but basically we could target the guy behind our main target, and you'll double the potency. You're suddenly doing 40k damage, right? Because, you know, in terms of cleave, and as far as Parasitic Contagion is concerned, that's all coming back as heals for you. So as a Necromancer, not only do you obviously get the Deathly Chill combo, but taking curses is kind of ridiculous too, just because of this. And it will make any situation you have in personal story or when you're running around, it will make sustain a question of the past just because of this. Further, you can compound that effect with Epidemic. One of my favorite little things to do, one of my little combos to make on this, is to basically cleave 2 targets with the Frost Gun. You target the guy behind, and then just before the guy behind dies, you Epidemic him. which again is another 25 bleed onto the other targets or the one that's a little bit closer to you. So you just do this absurd damage. If you're running a DPS meter that tracks everyone else's damage in open worlds, you'll always be very depressed, I think, to see how little other people do damage people do. Well, just by virtue of the fact this is such high damage, even completely unsupported, you'll be at the top every single time. It's that ridiculous, and you get crazy sustain as well. All the more reasons that this is probably gonna be nerfed. Don't worry, I will leave in the description if you're getting to this video late, if it has already been. That's not it for curses, though. I do want to talk a little bit about the minors as well, okay? Because we get bleed on crit, which is great, and we want tons of crit to proc our frost jet, so we'll be triggering that very frequently. We also get duration increase, which helps us. We get Fury on Shroud. That is actually something you can and probably should play into. Now, when you're at world bosses, there's tons of Fury just getting thrown out all over the place, especially since Revenants became a thing. So you're probably good for Fury as it is, but if you are totally solo sustaining, what you can do is toggle Shroud or go Shroud and use your 5 and then Whirl, right? And you will actually get a little bit of Fury there that will help you with those initial hits and spike your bleeds up to, you know, that juicy 100 bleed mark. 110, 123 bleeds I had there. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, this is a perfect demonstration. 22,000 damage with very little ramp, just consistently ticking off and off and off. I'll show you guys some footage now while I continue talking of one of the new bosses in the new map, the Jade Bomb. Now, a lot of you guys have probably experienced fighting this dude. He's tanky. He takes a long time to kill. Watch how fast and how easily this build solo kills that champion, all right, as we continue talking. Now, the other cool thing, though, in the meantime to understand, is another minor trait in curses, and this is a really important one for the build. I just talked about the fact we want a lot of crit chance. Well, the curses line also gives you target the weak. Target the weak gives you 2% more crit chance per condi on your opponent. And this build will always have at least 3 conditions on your target, because it will have chill on them. The chill will convert into bleed, so that's 2. And also another trait we'll get in a second means they always have vulnerability on them as well. So that's an extra 6% at minimum crit chance, which helps you hit that juicy 100% threshold, so you get, you know, the full 27 bleeds every single time you cast Frost Jet. So again, target the weak's really cool. And again, because we know that this is an open world build, when you think about it in like world bosses, people stack tons of condies on things in there anyway, and that will push your target the weak even further to absolutely guarantee you have 100% crit chance and 100% bleed duration, which are the 2 key things that this build needs. So what else do I run? Well, the Reaper line is obviously super important for this. The thing really to pay attention to is Deathly Chill, which we already talked about. Also nice, though, is Chilling Nova, which is critical hits against chilled foes, cause an explosion that also chills, which is even more bleeds, of course. You get chill on fear, and then that chill applies vuln because of another trait, and then that chill also applies bleed because of another trait, so that's a nice minor. And then lastly, chilling victory. Again, this is an open world build. This is a self-sustaining build. This is not a build or an environment where we can always assume we have 25 might. Well, guess what Reaper gives us? Striking a chilled foe grants might and a life force to us, and they will be permanently chilled and taking ridiculous damage. Now, this has an internal cooldown of 1 second, so you will at most only get a certain amount of might, I believe 8 might out of this, but it's something, and it will help you out there in the open world. So those are the 2 super crucial lines if you're going to play this, if you're going to go Frost Gun Necro. The last one is actually totally up to you. You can do whichever line you like. I personally like Spite. Spite is kind of more of the flat damagey line, yes. And so you can take Close to Death, for example, which is 20% more damage to low foes. Or Signets of Suffering. I actually do like running a Signet on this build, the Signet of Spite. Because Signet of Spite will stack a ton of different condies on them, including Chill and Blind, and then all that other stuff, which will help your target the weak. So what I mean by that is you can run Signet of Spite, stack a ton of condies immediately on someone and bleed damage, and then that is going to ensure that you're over the 100% threshold for your Frost Jet to stack, you know, up to 50 bleeds in like just 2 casts of the auto cast. So I love Signet of Spite for open world purposes, and maybe you can take the Signet trait if you're there as well, and you can get some might. Maybe even then run this Signet heal skill. But what's really cool about this specifically is Bitter Chill, the first decision you get to make. This is chilling a foe inflicts vuln. And again, just like Deathly Chill, Bitter Chill has no internal cooldown. So every single time we put 1 chill out, we also put out 3 vuln and 3 bleed. And so that means the second we get to 25 bleed, we also have 25 vulnerability. And for anyone out of the loop, vulnerability actually increases condition damage as of a long time ago now. So this Frost Jet is 9 chill, 9 bleed, 9 chill, 27 bleed, 25 vulnerability, just permanently loaded onto that skill that the tooltip won't tell you. And that is why I take Spite. But if you're a fan of blood magic and transfusion and all that stuff, if you're a fan of the tankiness from death magic, if you're a fan of soul reaping and maybe dipping in for doomfire or something sometimes, then those are all totally viable as well. Again, we're talking about an open world build, so a lot of damn stuff's viable, but this is just my preferred, this is my favorite way of playing Frostgun Necro. So, let's talk about the gear. Now, I haven't build crafted this perfectly out, okay? A couple of things I will say, though. It doesn't actually matter what weapons you have underneath, really, again, because you don't really get the trait synergies. You're mostly going to be on the Frost Gun. Having the opportunity to have your other skills, though, is, of course, incredibly useful. Because this is kind of a melee condi build for Necro. You will still, obviously, be able to use your standard Executioner's Scythe Soul Spiral combo, which will put out 27 bleeds as well. Like, this combo is the same as one auto, basically. I'm so getting this build nerfed doing this video, aren't I? So you obviously do care a little bit about your weapons underneath, but what the main things you're looking for in all of your gear, and I'm sure someone can theory craft a much better way of attaining this, okay? Out of your gear, your food, everything. 2 things. You're looking for, 3 things. You're looking for high condition damage, all right? So on my build right now, I'm at 1,696. You're looking for high condition damage. You're looking for 100% bleed duration, and as much duration as you can get on other stuff, I suppose, but you're doing nearly entirely bleed damage. Sometimes you'll throw out some poison, fear, stuff like that. So having other duration is nice. So mixing some Vipers in, you can probably do better overall than I'm showing off in this video. But having 100% bleed duration is incredibly important. And the final thing, the third thing, is having a high crit chance. So my crit chance here is actually 71%. Now, it's up to you if you decide whether you're going to have Fury or not, right? Like, against world bosses and stuff, you're probably going to be getting stray Fury from other people. And you get a little bit, of course, from dipping into Shroud, but it doesn't last too long. So you kind of get to decide. With Fury, I'm up to 91%. And then beyond that, we have Target the Weak, which then puts me up to like 97% with just my conditions. And a single other one, I'm at the 100% threshold. So that's the way I have it set up. The specifics of the gear that I'm doing to get those 3 things. So remember, it's 100% bleed duration, 100% crit chance, and then as much condition damage as you get. The mix I went with, and this was really on a whim, but I went with crate runes, which is significant condition damage and bleeding duration, plus a bit of fun on the elite. I like the flavor of this. Again, it's an open world build, so have fun, right? So when I cast Chill to the Bone, we stack a ton of condis as well because of our crate runes. Crate runes are also incredibly cheap, by the way. I'm running Rampager's gear, except weapons, which are Vipers. And again, there's probably a better way you can min-max this, but I wanted an excuse to run Rampage's stuff that wasn't just my condition Mesmer. Like, these 2 classes can run very similar stuff. And then for Sigils, I've actually got Agony, which is bleed duration, instead of Malice, which is not as potent, but will do every condi. And I also have Geomancy, which is even more bleeds when I get the Frost Gun on in the first place. And then I just got my Greatsword from my raiding build on there on the other side. So that's what I'm using. Rampages, Crates, and Agony. Foods, you can obviously have fun with, again, because it's an open world build. There's some slightly different things you can play around with here. You've, of course, got your standard, the rare veggie pizza, the toxic focusing crystals. I also like, though, toxic maintenance oils, which is what I'm wearing right now, which is extra precision for you. And I also like saffron stuffed mushrooms. Both of these are cheaper than a lot of the other foods you'll expect. The mushrooms are really fun. They're 200 extra condi damage after you've killed something, which in the open world is actually relevant, but also on top of that, you get 70 precision, and the precision is one of the things that I'm sort of, we care a lot about on this build. So this is a heavy crit, chill, Frostgun Necro. It does ludicrous damage in world bosses. You will outpressure anyone else. It's a real shame that you can't go into the aerodrome and test this. I would love to see what this is like on unrealistic boons, so that people understand, okay? when we're looking at actual DPS builds in raiding environments where you have all of the buffs and stuff, right? Generally speaking, very good builds under very good play will bubble around the 30,000 damage mark, right? That's good damage right there, and that's where they all sort of average around 30,000 damage. Pushing much beyond 30,000 damage is quite hard for most classes, okay? This build, unsupported in the open world, pushes 20k from auto-attacking. So who knows what it would look like with full buffs. Maybe someone could do that test before this is inevitably nerfed. Cheap gear, cheap stuff to run, super fun. Why not get in there and enjoy it while you can? I love the Frost Gun. I've always loved the Frost Gun, and seeing how Bitter Chill has changed since Heart of Thorns came out, it's just been brilliant. I love the synergy of the Signet of Spite. And hey, who doesn't want to stack 120, 130, perhaps even up to 150 bleeds if you get lucky enough, just from using this little gun? Amazing stuff. 1 gold for a stack, and that's it, guys. So that's my next little thing that I've been playing around with. I have loved this very much. Nearly Invulnerable, Condi Necro. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I need to start making a habit of getting stuff nerfed in this game, shouldn't I? Successfully paid his debt to the Lucky Horseshoe, he was eventually fingered by one of his victims and tried as a thief. His punishment was exile from the kingdom of Kryta. The local authorities blindfolded him and rode him out 3 full weeks before leaving him to fend for himself. Alone, broken, lost, Saul wandered through a dense forest for several days, surviving on only roots and berries. On the 4th day, delirious with hunger, Saul emerged from the trees to see what he thought was a hallucination. A city of massive towers reaching into the heavens. The architecture was astounding, and the creatures who lived here were unlike any he had ever seen. Walking down into their city, Saul got a closer look at the denizens of this place. They were tall and thin, with strange wing-like appendages that waved about in the slightest breeze. When they walked, their feet seemed